Low whistles. Low whistles, part 2. What's up, y'all? I did a video a while back on low whistles. I'll just link it up here in case you want to check that out if you haven't seen it already. And I think it caused more questions than answers. Specifically, I'm going to hit a couple of the things that people commented on and sent me emails about. We're going to break down 3 kind of main things when you're thinking about getting a low whistle. A couple of things to keep in mind. The first thing is finger spread and how different it's going to be going from, say, a basic D whistle to a low D, or even something not quite that big, a low F, low A, that kind of thing. So you got to keep that in mind. I got a couple questions on that, and I figured I'd bring a couple of examples here. So here's my regular old D whistle, my Gary Humphrey D. Here is a low D. So you can kind of see the difference in how big we're talking about here as far as what the spread is going to be. Comparison-wise also, here's the low F. You can kind of see that hopefully, right? Hope so. And then even the low A, which is not huge, but kind of the first one that I would consider to be a low whistle. You can see the difference there. Also, for comparison's sake, since not everybody's got a Gary Humphrey, this is a Fadog. My whistles were rolling away. So here's a comparison between the Gary Humphrey and the Fadog, which is going to be pretty close to a generation, or some of the more common ones. You can kind of see what we're looking at there for a comparison. Hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier to understand the difference in your finger sizing. Now, because that difference in finger spacing, you may or may not have to adopt a different type of grip. When we're playing a regular D whistle, you use the fingertips, right? Pretty standard, same way everybody plays. As you go to a lower whistle, let's take a peek at the low D. I might even have to back up just so you can see this, because this thing is just giant. You can't really play with your fingertips. If you try to do that, some people might be able to. I would think it's just about impossible, because that's just not a normal position for your hand to be in. As a result, what you could do is the piper's grip. A couple of people asked about that, so some of you obviously know what that is, but it's basically how pipers play, Uilleann pipers or Highland pipers, and you put the pads of your ring fingers on the bottom holes, like so, and everything else just kind of falls naturally over top of it. So the end result is that you're playing the top note with kind of this middle digit, the second note here kind of in between the knuckle, the pads here for this one, and same thing with the bottom end. You're right in the middle of the instrument, and your fingers just fall down on top of those holes naturally. So it works, it's just something you got to keep in mind as an adjustment. This is not something that you're probably used to if all you've ever done is play the regular D whistle. If you play pipes, it should be a piece of cake. Even on the lower whistles, you get the same issue. This is an F. I might be able to get away with playing this with just the fingertips, but I tend to play across a little bit. It's not quite as severe as on the D whistle, but it's a little bit closer, I guess, to the fingering of a regular D whistle, but I also do a bit of the piper's grip as well. You can kind of see where I'm at here, right? Now the A whistle, which I do still consider a low whistle, they're rolling away. This one I do play with fingertips, and this is where you may have a bit of a difference of opinion depending on how big your hands are. I tend to have giant, meaty hands. On the A whistle, I can still play with the fingertips and it works great. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is the width of the holes that you're not used to. There's going to take some adjustment to that. Not a big deal, but just take some practice. And keeping in mind, do you want to switch up the grip? The second thing that's going to be a bit of an adjustment is breath control and how much breath it takes to play the instrument. The D whistle, I mean, you can play it. It takes very little air to get something out of it. The low D whistle, on the other hand, you can't do that. It's just not going to produce enough air to make any sound. Better instruments, I would say, in my opinion, aren't going to require as much breath as lesser quality instruments, but they're definitely going to require more than what you're used to if all you played is a regular high D. So that's going to affect your phrasing. And it's not, again, not at the end of the world, not something you can't adjust to, but it is something you got to keep in mind, especially when you first start playing. You might find that you're blasting away and all of a sudden you're out of breath, where you're not used to taking a breath, where your phrase is not done. Part of that could just be a matter of getting used to it. Part of it could be the instrument. Again, different types of instruments require more and less breath. In my opinion, you shouldn't be hyperventilating after getting through one 8-bar phrase. So if that's the case, maybe look at a different instrument. This one's made by Killian O'Brien. I mentioned that in the video that I did a month or so ago about low whistles. I don't even know if he's still making whistles. His are great. Gary Humphrey, who I play almost exclusively, he makes a low D, and I'm sure it's awesome as well. The last point you're going to want to keep in mind is that it's probably going to affect how quickly you can play tunes. Some folks spend a ton of time playing on lower whistles, and they practice them up speed, and they're able to just rip through them. And if you want to do that, that's cool. Personally, I don't. I just haven't. If I'm playing up tempo, I'm either playing a regular D whistle or I'm playing the flute. For some reason, that I can play at Mach 3 if I have to, no big deal. But a low whistle, I just can't. Take an example tune. You can play that fairly quickly. That same tune on this, again, I'm going to have to back up. I'm just not as confident playing it at that tempo. I definitely want to slow it down. To me, that's not a big issue. I bought these lower whistles because typically they're going to be played with songs, something more mellow, and so it doesn't really matter if it's played slow. If you want to spend the time to learn how to play an A whistle like Mike McGoldrick does, where he's just ripping through it, cool. It's a great sound and it's totally worth your time. I never have, because I really just don't use these things other than playing with songs. That's just me, but it is something you're going to want to keep in mind. Again, if you're just used to coming from a regular D whistle, you're definitely going to be able to play that a lot faster than you can a low D whistle. Let me know what you think about this. If you have any other questions about low whistles, I'm happy to answer them as best I can. Hopefully I answered a few of those that have come up over the past few weeks or month or so since I did that last video. And anything else, any requests, let me know, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Cheers, y'all. Bye-bye.